mental health of these women, considering their overall health, their emotional health, their financial stability. We are constantly on deck looking at how to bring these women out of the trauma. Because again, a nation that doesn't have stable women, stable daughters, stable mothers, definitely will not have stable homes and consequently will not have a stable society.
Absolutely, Queen, on that one is what noting that the United Nations report states that women do constitute half of the world's population. Now, you've cited a lot of powerful points. And now to get to you, FOTSING, you listened to your co-panelists who mentioned a lot of pertinent points, and you are equally one that work with a non-governmental organization, a lot in IDP here in Cameroon, and of course, you work with the field, especially those that have been displaced, especially women and girls from conflict. Now, being one that is always on the field, how would you evaluate the impact conflict do have on these vulnerable population?
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I don't know if you can get me well.
Yes, I can. Please kindly proceed.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the floor, and I would like to thank as well my panelists for the brilliant edification which you just did. I think actually the situation on the ground or on the field is like deplorable, because you know, as we all know, women and children are the most vulnerable during a crisis. And so most of them, I can say more than 95% of the vulnerable women are in need of income generating activities which can permit them to become autonomous or resilient. And so it is really difficult because most of them, as I earlier said, most of them are facing like hard times. They are really living in deplorable situations and are abandoned to themselves. And so that is why we continue to advocate to see how we can bring this situation on light. It's true it is on light already, but it is like probably forgotten because people are leaving them to live on their own. And so it is very difficult for them like to start back a new life. You know, most of them before the crisis were fine. And so now in their host communities, it is really difficult for them, for women in particular, for children as well, to see how they can start back a new life. And so such opportunities or such initiatives of yours is applaudable, because through such initiatives, it will become like visible for everyone to come on board to see how we can permit them to become autonomous. And so when you look at the statistics, probably in Douala, in Bafoussam, in FongoD, in Tayanzi, in towns in particular, you see that it is really alarming and their needs are numerous. It's true we can't do everything, but we have to like see how to prioritize solutions to their needs. I think that's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you immensely, FOTSING. We'll be coming back to you subsequently. Just to reiterate, you started some key areas that are touching here in Cameroon. Now back to you, JOKEM. You listened to your co-panelists, and that leads me to the next question. Now, you mentioned earlier on that women, as a result of conflict across Africa, sometimes led or driven into forced marriages, child marriages, are being victims of rape, which is something your co-panelists aligned with. He said that these women sometimes find it difficult to get back to their feet as a result of finding themselves in different communities. Now, you mentioned you are human rights activists, and as a woman, as a human rights activist, what is your point of view as far as the impact this has? Because we've cited a few, but from a critical point of view, what impact does this conflict have on women and girls, not just in Cameroon, not just in Sudan, but in other red zones across the African continent?
Again, Sharon, the predominant impact of conflict on women and girls is that they become instruments of war. They become weaponized. You know, they are the fallback. They receive the fallback of the crisis. Now, we want to look at how this fallback affects them mentally. And when I'm talking about the fallbacks of the crisis for the world, I am most particularly talking about sexual assault, sexual violence that these women suffer. And it affects them mentally, first of all. It affects them emotionally. It affects them educational ones. It affects their overall health. It is very recurrent that when you see a woman or a young girl that has been a victim of violence, and here I want to say regardless of whether she is in a crisis zone or not, on a very general note, any lady, any girl or woman that has been a victim of sexual abuse always has a problem to deal with at the level of her reasoning, mental issues. Mental issues because she suffers depression, she's gone through a traumatic experience that she needs to heal from. Remember, we are talking about the impact of this conflict on the stability of women and girls. They have a mental stress that they go through from the traumatic experience that they suffer. They have an emotional problem that they need to solve because most of them tend to harbor and nurse a lot of hate and resentment for themselves, for men, for the community as a whole. They lose value in themselves. They don't see their worth any longer. And as a result of all this, you see many young girls, many women that have been victims of these kind of situations end up being drug addicts, end up getting into prostitution, end up surrendering themselves to smoking, to alcohol consumption, and many other social ills, trafficking, many other social ills that you can think about. These are the consequences. These are the effects and the impact of the crisis that these women suffer because of political crisis zones, because of crises that exist in areas which are not existing because of them, but of which they end up being victims. We need to note very carefully that in a country like Cameroon, that my co-panelist mentioned earlier on, most of these internally displaced persons, particularly the women and girls, have been victims at least once or twice of rape, of sexual assault. We need to take note of that. And we also need to take note of the fact that because of this, they find it difficult to also get fully integrated in their host communities. Sometimes it's not only because the host communities look at them as IDPs, sometimes it is also because inside of their minds, they have been destroyed mentally and emotionally, and they are no longer able to fit themselves properly into a community. Everyone to them looks like a suspect. Every man to them looks like a rapist. Everyone comes across to them like someone who wants to take advantage of them or someone who wants to abuse them at some point in life.
Thank you so much, Queen, for that one. Of course, it's worth touching, and it's a call for African nations, especially leaders, to take action and, of course, address such recurrent issues across the continent. Back to you, FOTSING. You listen to her, and now as one that works on the field, you listen to her, which she said that some of these ladies that have been displaced from their homes of origin, sometimes once or twice, have been victimized, say, from sexual violence or sexual assault, and you can name the rest. Now, in your opinion, what are some of the measures, as because you're part of a non-governmental organization, what are some of the measures that have been taken to ensure that these women and girls that most of the times are regarded as vulnerable are being taken or are being protected from these numerous conflicts that are impacting them in different ways?
I would like to thank you again and thank my co-panelists for briefing the show. But you know, as I earlier said, we need to such initiatives permit us to mobilize resources mobilize people of goodwill, organizations to come on board to see how we can assist these persons. You know, in particular, most of them, as I earlier said, most of them, their needs are really profound. And because of the fact that they don't want to talk. And so you have to use like a friendly approach for them to open up. And so you really see that their needs are enormous. As my co-panelist just evoked, their needs are numerous. But for us, we like try to see how we can bring in some assistance for them, probably suitable, sustainable solutions to their needs. Because we can do that maybe in terms of psychosocial assistance. You know, most of them, as I earlier said, are traumatized. They are really traumatized because of the incidents they lived. And so we like try to bring in some psychosocial support for them. And also, most in particular, which we always forget, they are in need of food items. Probably, they won't open up, but if you're on the field, you will discover for yourself. They are in need of food assistance. So we like try to see in how we can put in some solutions for them. And our assistants are probably multi-form or multi-assistance, multi-purpose. Because we like give him some cash approach, some cash for income generating activities. We as well provide some psychosocial support, because as my co-panelists earlier said, cases of rape, cases of sexual violence, cases of sexual abuse are alarming. And so we like try to see if we can bring in some human rights activists, some human rights organizations to see if they can bring in some assistance for them. Thank you.
Thank you too. Back to you, KAAH JOKEM. Now, in Sudan, for instance, a report that was published on Monday stipulated that though there were numerous cases of sexual violence in the country, we had just about 262 that had actually gone through medical care. Now, when you look at Sudan, that is just an example. When you focus on other countries across the African continents that have been, we have women and girls that have been victimized as a result of this political crisis, which they didn't necessarily ask for. Now, women are looking for alternative means after this conflict to be able to survive. They're looking for ways to be able to protect themselves. And we have seen in other countries where women get involved in activities like getting through trainings like fighting to be able to equip themselves with some skills that could be able to protect them against these people that they think could be perpetrators of these acts of sexual violence. Now, is this true for the rest of the African continents? And of course, is this actually something that is worth noting?
I love this question that you asked, Sharon, and I applaud every woman that decides to train herself, to give herself the platform to be able to protect herself, either by learning martial arts, by learning kung fu, boxing, whatever it might be. As long as you're doing it to protect yourself, kudos to you. However, in Africa, most African societies have made sure that they weaken, that they fragilize the woman, and they make the woman believe that there are certain things that she cannot do, that she doesn't have the strength, she doesn't have be it the physical strength or the psychological strength or the emotional strength or the financial strength, whatever form of power it is. Women have been made to believe that they do not have this ability. Now, for those who are doing it already, I would say that as much as they can duplicate themselves, they should go ahead. As many women as they can train, they should go ahead and train these women to be able to defend themselves, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who need to start defending ourselves. However, physical strength is not all that we need. We need this sister-to-sister assistance. And I would say that sister-to-sister assistance is when you are a victim of violence and you consider it. When I talk of violence, I am referring here to any form of violence. No degree of violence is so minimal. It's so small that we should minimize. if someone should even just touch you inappropriately or talk to you inappropriately, it is more than enough violence for you to report. So if such a thing happens, you are a victim of any of such, you should be responsible enough to report this. If you are ever a witness to a situation of violence, do not consider it as something small, report it. Again, because in our African society, women are one of the first persons to quickly tell a young girl, just ignore it. Just be quiet about it. Let's protect the face of the family. Let's protect the face of the country. Let's protect. So we keep encouraging our fellow girls and women to give themselves for destruction in the name of protecting a person, a gender, in the name of protecting a community that does not respect themselves. Secondly, they need support. More than enough support is being given. A lot of support, is being given already, but it is not yet more than enough. They need support from human rights activists, from the civil society. They need people, women and girls need people that they can trust. We need to build a trust system where these women and girls that are victims and survivors can comfortably approach and talk about their traumatic experiences, talk about the things that they have gone through and how they feel about themselves, about the perpetrators, about the community, how they feel about life. We need to make sure that we provide more and more trauma healing experts. We need to provide more and more psychosocial workers. We need to provide health care. Again, in Sudan, over 200 cases were reported, but you do not know the number of cases that have not been reported yet. And of the 200 cases that were reported, not all of them have been able to receive medical assistance. This is how we need to build a supportive network, you know. It is not just about organizing conferences. Because again, not all of these women can be able to find themselves in this conference hall. It's not just about organizing, social media, online platform activities. Not all of these women have the possibility to get a phone or a laptop or a TV. But what we can do for those of us who already know from a very, academic or professional standpoint, the impact of violence on a woman, a child, a girl child, and a nation, it is our responsibility to make sure every single day that more and more we go closer to these women. We bring them the awareness that they need, and we hold their hands and strategically work them out of the trauma. We are looking at women that are victims and survivors of violence, but we also need to ensure that we are considering the women and girls that are potential victims of this same kind of violence. And on this note, I would say that law enforcement, unfortunately in crisis zones, law enforcement officers are one of the main perpetrators of sexual assault. It's rather unfortunate. However, the states, the governments need to make sure that punishment is served for any person that is found guilty of rape, of sexual assault, of abuse, of violence, of any form on a woman and a girl child. We also need to ensure that our network is so strong, so solid, that we are putting out acts every day. We need to ensure that we are struggling hard. I call it a struggle because it is really one. We are struggling hard to break the norms of patriarchy and give the woman the value and the worth that she deserves.
Thank you, Queen. I would like to stay with you. Now, you mentioned something, and of course, just to reiterate that you are representative or the country director of the International Human Rights Commission here in Cameroon. Now then, what is the IHRC doing in Cameroon to empower these ladies? Because you said that it is not enough for them to be able to empower themselves with skills or fighting skills. They need to empower themselves through different ways, through different means, of course. Now, so what measures have the IHRC done to empower those women that have, say, overcome these various conflicts, be it in Cameroon or outside the country, and of course this post-conflict era. You should note that some of these women, when they overcome this sexual violence, for instance, sometimes happen to grapple with the effects of unwanted pregnancies, psychological traumas, and a host of others. So what has the IHRC done so far?
In other countries in Africa, the IHRC has built a network already. Again, I would want to say that the IHRC is a few months old in Cameroon.
Yeah.
Now, in other countries, there has been a network already of women that are human rights activists that work particularly as trauma healing experts, as counselors, as advisors to women that have been victims and survivors of sexual violence. Now, most particularly, IHRC Cameroon is very interested in empowerment of women. Now, when I'm talking about empowerment of women in the IHRC, I am not referring just to the economic empowerment. This is an important aspect though, but I am referring more to political empowerment of women. You know, when I talk of this political empowerment of women, it is this aspect where we train women to become leaders themselves. You understand? It's not just about teaching a woman how to bake a cake, how to make liquid soap and detergents, and you know, some of these things that can bring her economic stability, but teaching the woman how to be able to make decisions that will impact her life, the lives of her children, and the lives of the other women. We need women leaders. Because at the end of the day, all these political challenges that we have and that women suffer from, challenges that they do not cause, but that they suffer from, could be avoided or could be minimized if we had more women in decision-making spaces. So at the end of the day, you would realize that for you to be able to correct the fact that women that are victims of violence and who do not receive proper medical assistance, if we had more women in decision-making spaces, they would consider the fact that health assistance needs to be provided to victims of rape, to victims of violence in conflict zones. If you have women in decision-making spaces, they would also be able to consider the impact of violence on women, the impact of conflict on women, and strategies, remedy strategies would be different, would be looked at differently. Unfortunately, in our countries, in our governments in Africa today, they always think about different ways to remedy the effects of conflict, except how to remedy the effects of conflict on women and girls. This is simply because most of these leaders of ours do not understand the problems of women. They do not know, they do not have an idea of what it is to be raped. And so they really do not see this as an issue of importance to put on the table. So IHRC Cameroon, we are launching already for the first 3 months a training for guidance counselors and trauma healing experts. This is something that we are launching from September. It will run from September to December. We will do an evaluation and we are prioritizing women. Again, it is not a training we are offering only to women, but we will be prioritizing women because these are the women who will be able to act as counselors for victims of violence. Secondly, IHRC Cameroon is working already in close collaboration with necessary stakeholders, ensuring that every little case of violence that is reported, be it an act that has been perpetrated already or a suspected act, an attempted act of violence that is reported to the IHRC office, we ensure that justice is served, that the victim gets justice, and that the perpetrator get punishment. These two examples, there are lots of things that the IHRC Cameroon has on deck, planning to do. Other things that we have started doing already, we are working presently, we are already on a project for rehabilitation centers for drug addicts. Mind you, people that are victims of violence are standing a higher risk of being victims of addictions, drug addiction in particular. So we are already working on this project. This is something that is running already for drug rehabilitation for drug addicts. It will be running first in 4 regions of Cameroon. We are going to talk about the details probably on some other program. But this is what IHRC Cameroon is doing. We are a few months old in Cameroon, but we know that we are here for Cameroonians. We are here because Cameroon exists. And this is what we have to do for our women, for our girls, for our brothers, for the nation as a whole. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Absolutely. Just to reiterate that it's not just women and girls that are victims of conflict. You cited earlier that equally men too are victims of these conflicts that are plaguing the African continent. Back to you, FOTSING. You listened to your co-panelist, which she had her own point of view to share. But then I'd like to cite, we have seen numerous cases of peacekeepers actually crossing bounds in different African countries. We saw that in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in the Central African Republic. But in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, some months ago, we had some UN peacekeepers, which is in line with what your co-panelist said. We saw these UN peacekeepers that were being accused of sexually assaulting women in the country. Now, this is not just a problem which is linked to that nation, but I'd like to generalize it now to the African continent. Could we cite that example as some of the disadvantages of say, having some of these missions on the African continent, especially when a country is going through a period of, I'd like to term it, instability?
Thank you so much. Most of them, as my co-panelist just said, from a legal perspective, the cases of sexual assault are really alarming, but they are not documented. They are not documented, and so you have to go closely to these persons to see that they themselves testify that they have been assaulted or been raped. And also, you see that the cases of unwanted pregnancies, most of them, majority of them are caused by these bodies. But you see, as I earlier said, they are undocumented, unfortunately. And so I can't really give you the exact statistics with regards to the situation in a Cameroon context. Thank you.
Yeah, staying with you, FOTSING. Now, you said most of these cases are undocumented, which is something JOKEM will share with you. But then, as someone who works closely on the ground, on the field, how can the authorities that are being involved, especially, I would like to say, how can they ensure that some of these cases get down into the book to ensure that when we are talking about such cases, we are talking from the facts, based from what the data that has been collected from these victims per se? We are carrying out a lot of advocacy to see that studies can be conducted, scientific studies can be conducted. It's true we can't give the exact statistics with regards to those the deplorable situation, because studies are not conducted, unfortunately. Studies are not conducted. And so that we at Lodge and ITP, we conduct studies as well to prove out this situation on the field. But it's not enough. It's not enough. That is why we are carrying out a lot of sensitization, advocacy towards these UN organizations, UN bodies, men and women of goodwill, so that studies can be conducted, because it is in line with if we have the exact statistics, if we have these reports, we can see how we can intervene directly. But since as we don't have the statistics, it's unfortunate. So that is the situation on the field, the disadvantage of the situation. Thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Queen. You listened to your co-panelists, and earlier on you mentioned that you at the IHRC do empower women at a political perspective or political point of view. Now, to capitalize on that, what role can women play as far as conflict prevention and conflict resolution is concerned across the African continent? Because Africa admits these numerous disadvantages of these conflicts which we are seeing ravaging the African continent, while noting that through awareness we can get to some point where we can be able to quell these numerous crises and of course prevent them from say a point of education. So as in your opinion as an expert, what role can women play as far as conflict prevention and resolution is concerned?
Okay, Sharon, before I answer your question on the role that women can play in conflict resolution in Africa, I want to first of all say something about the fact that peacekeepers end up being perpetrators of violence and abuse on women. Already, like I said earlier on, we have law enforcement officers that end up being rapists, end up being abusers, end up being perpetrators of violence. We have UN peacekeepers, we have human rights activists that end up being perpetrators of violence. However, this does not mean that every law enforcement officer, every peacekeeper, every UN peacekeeper or human rights activist is a perpetrator of violence. Now, before being UN peacekeepers and law enforcement officers and all whatnot, they are first of all humans, right? And if you falter, you need to be punished. Justice has to be served. And I even think that for these people who are supposed to carry the banner of peace, security, and stability, their punishment should be more severe because they understand better the implications of their treacherous act and should not be let off the hook because they are human, they are UN peacekeepers or human rights activists or law enforcement officers. If anybody of such a standard or caliber should be a perpetrator of violence, there should be no hesitation with reporting this case to the offices that are responsible. Now, with regards to the role of women in conflict resolution in Africa, of course, women can play. In some situations, we have seen that women have played a very significant role in peace resolution in conflict areas. Again, because women are the ones who really understand the implication and the impact of this conflict in the community. They know what conflict does to a home. They know what conflict does to a daughter. They know what conflict does to a son. A woman is the one who knows what it means to carry her husband who went out for war and came back as a corpse. She knows what it means to become a woman grave digger. These women are better placed. And so I would say that women need to play a crucial role. And for this role to have meaning, it means that women need to get into spaces of decision making. And that is why we are training women. There are also other organizations, other bodies that are training women to be involved in decision-making spaces. Already I want to say that a woman's human rights activist who pushes herself to get to a place of decision-making is a woman that is getting involved in the political realities of her country. Because when you want to talk about the disadvantages of conflict and see how peaceful dialogues can be organized between the conflict parties, you are actually being a peace negotiator, you are playing the role of a diplomat, hence you are playing the role of a politician. So women should know, women must understand that they play a very important role in reconciling crises, in reconciling situations in the countries in Africa. We all need to get involved in these spaces of decision making. I will insist and insist and insist on this because that is where the conflict started, from a decision. And for conflicts to end, we need to arrive at a decision. And the people who started the conflict were not the women, but the people who need for the conflicts to end are the women. So women need to get up the ladder, get off their knees, get on their feet, and get themselves into spaces of decision making. This is the role that women can play in reconciling conflicts in Africa. Protect the fellow woman, protect the girl child, bring the men, bring the leaders to the understanding that we have a voice and we are working for the interests of our communities, for the interest of our countries, and for the interest of our Africa.
Absolutely. Everybody has a voice as far as conflict prevention and resolution is concerned on the African continent. And that will lead me to my next question to you, FOTSING. You listened to JOKEM on how women, or the need for women to be empowered to get to the decision-making space, for them to be able to contribute their views as far as conflict prevention is concerned. And now, given you equally have an insight on what conflict resolution is all about, now could you give us your stance as far as what needs to be done to quell conflicts, or better still, reduce these numerous tensions or crises which the African continent is facing as of now?
Thank you for giving me the floor again. As my co-panelists earlier evoked, women are agents of change. If we empower women, solutions in communities can be brought to light. If women are empowered in income generating activities, their needs will be solved. And so we are doing a lot of advocacy to see how we can try to change the situation. And so that is why we have to bring everyone on board. Everyone needs to be involved so that we can try to bring sustainable solutions. Now we are in a situation of conflict. Unfortunately, you know, it is really undesired. It's an undesired situation. But if everyone is, women have a voice. Women have a voice. But unfortunately, most of the times I see things are being done, but they're not done properly. They're not done properly because those who are really involved in this crisis are not taken into consideration. Because if they were taken into consideration, I think that gradually solutions can be brought to light. So I think that everyone has to come on board, women in particular, because women are agents of change. We can't take any decision without involving women. Women are agents of change. And so in any decision-taking process, women should be included. The aspirations of women, the needs of women needs to be taken into consideration. And so, as I earlier said, such initiatives are applaudable because through such initiatives, I think that gradually we will try to bring solutions to our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, over to you, JOKEM. Do you share the same point of view as your co-panelists? Queen, are you with us? I was asking if you share the same point of view as your co-panelists as far as quelling tensions, or better still, bringing an end to conflicts on the African continent is concerned. Unfortunately, we got indications that we lost Queen, but hopefully she's going to join us back in the course of
probably network. She's out. Probably network.
Yeah, so we're hoping she's going to get back to us. Now, to get back to FOTSING, now, over the years, we recall the resolution that was made by the United Nations Security Council in the year 2000 as far as the role of women in conflict resolution across Africa is concerned, where they said women count for peace. I like to quote that. Now, looking at the role that women have been playing over the years as far as conflict resolution is concerned, some experts have termed this at a rate of about 30%. Now, as far as the African continent is concerned, forcing to globalize, as an expert, what do you think the African continent's stance should be as far as addressing this problem of these, say, impact that women have had to face over the years and continue to face in recent times as far as the repercussions of this conflict is concerned? What should Africa, what are some of the measures the African continent should actually take to address this problem?
Thank you so much. you know, most of the times, resolutions have been taken, recommendations have been taken, but unfortunately, they are not being executed. They are not being implemented. That is the worry we have in African countries, because most of the times resolutions are taken, but they are not being taken into consideration. So I think that a lot of sensitization needs to be done. A lot of advocacy needs to be done from the national level, at the community levels. A lot of advocacy needs to be done so that these solutions can be, proper solutions can be brought to light. Thank you.
Thank you to FOTSING. But now we have mentioned that palatable solutions, of course, solutions that are feasible and are of essence to the context of the African continent. Could we say, you mentioned that some studies are being carried out as far as taking data from the ground is concerned, but then are feasibility studies enough to counter these issues, these repercussions that we continue to see on women and girls across the African continent, notwithstanding the fact that we have international actors that sometimes take part in trying to alleviate the burden on some of these non-governmental organizations, and as far as helping is concerned. Now, as one that is in charge of programs and partnerships with Lodge and IDP here in Cameroon, how would you say that we have, or what is the role of some of these international partners as far as helping the humanitarian crisis on women and girls is concerned?
Thank you so much. You know, as I earlier said, most of the times the studies are not conducted because most of these organizations, they have the funding, they have the necessary resources to conduct these studies, but unfortunately, studies are not conducted. And so that is why with the studies we've conducted so far in towns, we like try to see that we like push forward to see how sustainable solutions can be given to these persons. You know, it is through these studies that we can really identify these cases, serious cases, those who are really in need of solutions. And so, as I earlier said, it is only through advocacy, we only continue to advocate so that studies can be conducted. Because it is through these studies that we can easily identify these really needy persons so that solutions can be brought to their needs.
Okay, FOTSING, just to reiterate that you are on Lodge and IDP. As far as Lodge and IDP is concerned, you are representative and, of course, in charge of programs and partnerships here in Cameroon. Now, staying with you, now we've reiterated that the African continent is in dire need as far as alleviating the impact of these conflicts we keep seeing across Africa. But then we've cited some key points that need to be taken into consideration as far as stopping conflicts in Africa is concerned. But amid all this, could education actually play a key role in helping stop conflicts across the African continent?
Yeah. Through education. Education is a tool, is a great tool which can permit solve this resolve some of this conflict. Through education, because you know most of the times we are not aware of what is happening in our communities. We are not aware of what is happening in our country. And I think that if we continue to educate our population, educate decision makers, I think that we'll go ahead in resolving conflicts in our country or in Africa as well. Thank you.
Now, since you mentioned that if we involve decision makers, now at the level of, since you've engaged with those those that have been victimized from this numerous conflict, could you say that when education is concerned, at the level of the stakeholders that are supposed to, the key actors that are supposed to take part in addressing this problem, would you say that they are actually prioritizing education? And of course, if they are not doing so, what points should be taken into consideration?
I can tell you that education has not been prioritized. Because if you go to our communities, you will see that more than 95% of these victims of circumstances, which I prefer to use that, are uneducated. are dropouts, are illiterate, can't go to school. So I think that we have to see how to bring these people on board. It's true, decision makers are like, they are doing their work, right? But it is not enough. It is not enough. Because when you go back to the communities, you see that most of our people are uneducated. So I think that through education, as I earlier said, everything resolves through advocacy. If we do our advocacy properly, I think that everything will be solved. Yeah, I lay emphasis on that. Through advocacy, advocacy plays a primordial role in conflict resolution. Thank you.
Thank you too. I'll be coming back to you, ladies and gentlemen, just to recall that we are discussing in the course of today's edition of the program the impact of conflicts across Africa on women and girls. And of course, this follows reports that was published by the International Human Rights Watch on Monday as far as several cases of sexual violence on this part of the African population has been recorded not just in Sudan but in other parts of the African continent. And of course, you're watching us on FONYUY television, listening to us over the airways of FM 96.3 or Pan-African Radio, and we're streaming live on YouTube. And of course, with our guests this day, we have been evoking that as far as the impact of conflicts on women and girls is concerned, there is a need for women to get empowered politically, get involved in decision making, and of course actively take part in conflict resolution and prevention across the African continent. And I would like to quote the resolution of the United Nations Security Council in the year 2000 that stated that women count for peace, and not just in Africa but at the global stage. And at this point, we have several hotspots on the African continent that are witnessing conflict, quoting Sudan, quoting the Democratic Republic of Congo, quoting Libya that saw crisis since 2011 with the death of the former leader Muammar Gaddafi, quoting other countries on the African continent. And of course, it's of pivotal role for stakeholders across Africa to address this problem on the African continent. And of course, since we lost KAAH JOKEM, who is the representative of the International Human Rights Commission here in Cameroon, I'm still with FOTSING FONYUY, who is a representative of Lodge and IDP here in Cameroon. Now, to conclude today's edition of the program, given we've cited and elucidated on what needs to be done as far as addressing this problem in Africa, particularly in Cameroon, is concerned. As an expert, what do you say is the way forward, not just for Cameroon, but for stakeholders, and of course, women and girls that are sometimes victims of these numerous conflicts, to take as far as moving forward in Africa is concerned?
Thank you so much. I think that, as I said, we need to mobilize resources to see how most of their problems can be brought to light. And I think that everyone has a role to play. You have a role to play. I have a role to play. We are agents of change. I think that if we educate our population, not only individuals, I think that we will go far in resolving conflict, not only in Cameroon, but in Africa as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you to FOTSING representative and of course in charge of programs and partnerships for Lodge and IDP in Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, like you mentioned, he said education has a key role to play, and that is a clarion call for all stakeholders to take as far as resolving or addressing this problem on Africa is concerned. Education has a key role to play. Education does not just limit itself at the level of the classroom. Education limits itself. It doesn't just limit itself at that level, but of course it has a role to play as far as awareness is concerned, as far as bringing to the limelight some of the problems, coming out to speak about those problems, and of course finding African solutions to African problems is a concern. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking our time to be part of us this day on Talking Points on your Pan-African channel FONYUY Media Africa. We believe you learned a lot from today's exchange, and our panel for today constituted included Queen Yvette Bane, who is a representative of the International Human Rights Commission, and of course FONYUY. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I've been NJIX NABESEH for presentation. Meanwhile, I will leave you in company of our numerous programs. Bye-bye.